An executive producer at Marvel Studios has confirmed that the TVA is going to be around in the MCU for a long time and affect other projects. He stated in an interview yesterday, the TVA is an organization that will continue to have stories to tell, which is one of the exciting things about it to us. And this right here could be Loki's glorious purpose. As it turns out, Loki might have been thinking a little bit too small when he tried to conquer Earth, because he could possibly conquer the entire multiverse by being the leader of the TVA. Of course, it seems like he would do things differently, or will he? Will he reign in benevolence, or will he ultimately decide that they do need to prune timelines, killing everyone in that timeline in order to save the sacred timeline and keep the entire multiverse from shattering? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder. I'm Warren Thompson, and this is what Loki is currently dealing with in Loki Season 2, Episode 1. When he gets back and he starts talking to Mobius in the present time, he states that he doesn't know what the right choice was. He tells Mobius that he got to the man at the end of time, and he was right. He who remains was right. And this is something we are going to see Loki struggle with throughout the entire season. We've even seen in the trailers Loki and Sylvie talking, where Sylvie says, "We're playing God," and Loki says, "We are gods." So is it our gods, Loki and Sylvie's destiny to rule the TVA, just like He Who Remains said? I believe that this could be how Loki Season 2 ends, with Loki and possibly and hopefully Sylvie ruling over the TVA. As we've discovered in the finale of Loki Season 1 and in the post-credits scene of Loki Season 2, Episode 1, Loki and Sylvie do not see He Who Remains and the TVA the same way. In the finale, Loki fought Sylvie, trying to get her to just take a second and think about what the right option was. Should they kill He Who Remains, or should they simply take his place? The big question being, is He Who Remains right? Was he right by creating the TVA, by pruning all of the other timelines and only keeping one timeline so he could keep the other variants of Nathaniel Richards, aka Kang the Conqueror, aka He Who Remains, and anybody else that's going to come into play like Victor Timely? Was that the right move? Well, Loki is struggling with this, but he has already said a few things that make us believe that he does indeed believe He Who Remains was right. When Loki finally gets to the present and talks to Mobius, he tells him, "I just wanted more time to think." And he says that it was an impossible choice. And he says that Sylvie was so certain, but how could she be given the consequences? So Loki believed He Who Remains. He understood the consequences. He heard what he was saying loud and clear. But now he's gone, and Loki knows that he said it was up to him and Sylvie to run the TVA now, or he was coming. A bunch of different variants of him, infinite variants of him, were going to come, and they're going to start a multiversal war. But Loki drops a huge bomb when talking to Mobius. He says, "Mobius, we got to the man at the end of time, and he made sense. We thought it was about freeing the timeline, but that brings only more malevolence, more violence, more war, more of him. They're coming. They're all coming." He also goes on to say, maybe it's true, everything he was doing, the preservation of the sacred timeline, the pruning, it was all about preventing more of him. There was no simple choice. But then Loki says there was no other way. So it's very clear from this dialogue that we hear with him speaking to Mobius that he actually believes He Who Remains made sense and was right. But what does this mean for the future of Loki? Like I said, I believe that Loki could be destined to rule the entire TVA and rule the multiverse. However, I don't think he's going to do this by pruning all of these different timelines. Instead, I think it's going to be more about monitoring them and maintaining them. And I have a theory of how they could do this, and it does involve sort of a Multiversal Avengers team, which according to some reports, we are supposed to see in Deadpool 3 and Avengers Secret Wars. We've talked about this team before. We'll go over it again really briefly and talk about how Loki will rule the TVA. But first, big thank you to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. Many of you probably know by now that I personally use HelloFresh a lot, because for me, it simply makes sense. I have a pretty busy schedule in my day-to-day life, and HelloFresh just makes eating good meals a lot easier for me. With over 40 different recipes that I could choose from each week, HelloFresh does all the shopping and meal planning for you. Ingredients arrive at your doorstep, pre-portioned and ready to cook, along with pictured step-by-step recipe cards. They literally make it as easy as it possibly could be. The meals are very quick to make, and they do include some 15-minute meals as well. It takes the hassle out of mealtime, but it also can save you money. HelloFresh is cheaper than grocery shopping and 25% less expensive than takeout. That means less stress of worrying about what you're going to eat, and you save money. So if interested, go to hellofresh.com/50cosmic and use code 50cosmic for 50% off plus free shipping. That's hellofresh.com/50cosmic and use code 50cosmic for 50% off plus free shipping. So according to some recent reports from some insiders and some confirmations from some big outlets as well, the TVA is going to be a part of Deadpool 3. And like I read to you in the beginning, executive producer Kevin Wright over at Marvel Studios did confirm that the TVA is going to play a role in the MCU moving forward. And here's what he had to say in an interview with Deadline when talking about if there's going to be another season of Loki and if Loki Season 2 is going to affect other properties. Deadline asked, does Loki Season 2, like other Marvel series, bridge to another big movie in the near future? Clearly, the next Avengers Kang Dynasty, but are there others? He said, nothing I could say in the near future. I have something to say about this, but let's finish what he said. He says, the implications will ripple into other projects though. Certainly. And the TVA is an organization that will continue to have stories to tell, which is one of the exciting things about it to us. So he confirms Loki Season 2 and the TVA will go into other projects, which totally makes sense because this is the multiverse saga. Loki Season 2 is all about the multiverse and trying to actually control the multiverse. Now he says nothing in the near future, but we know how this works. If there is something that's about to happen like the TVA or Loki and Mobius being in Deadpool 3, he can't just come out and say that. They've signed NDAs, plus Kevin Feige has the sniper to his head, of course. So he says no, not in the near future, but then he goes on to say, yes, it bleeds into other projects, certainly. So this is basically, yes, expect Loki or the TVA or Mobius or something from Loki Season 2 to pop up in other projects, I would say soon. Then they talk about where the story arc of Loki is going to go and if it's going to go beyond Season 2. Now, if Loki is going to go on to control the TVA and be the ruler of the TVA, I would definitely think that it's going to go past Loki Season 2 and would go into at least other projects where the TVA is heavily involved and the multiverse is heavily involved, like Deadpool 3 and Secret Wars. Now, insiders have told us that while the multiverse is starting to have a lot of incursions happen, the TVA is going to go around to different universes and they will save selected heroes. Then they'll put them on one world together, Battle World. Then when Secret Wars comes, the TVA is going to send a team to help the Earth 616 heroes. This team is going to be sort of a multiverse Avengers team, which I think the TVA is going to implement in the future for keeping control over the multiverse. Insiders state that this team is going to be led by Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, and Deadpool. I hope the reports about this are accurate because I really want to see this. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and Hugh Jackman's Wolverine are my childhood heroes. So finger crossed this is real. And if it is real, it does seem like the TVA sort of has a tactic here, using a group of multiversal heroes who are super strong and powerful to help other timelines. So let's take it back to how Loki and Sylvie feel. Both of them want free will. However, the big question that Loki is asking himself right now is that if they give the entire multiverse free will that destroy the multiverse? It's not that he doesn't want people to have it, it's that it could destroy everything. Sylvie, on the other hand, sort of just set out to do one thing: destroy the person who made her entire life hell, the person in charge of the TVA. She ran from the TVA her entire life. They took her from her home. They took everything from her, and she just wanted to bring it down. So she didn't really care about the consequences because she got her revenge. But the main point of Loki Episode 1 in the War Room with Hunter B-15 and Mobius and General Dox and Judge Gamble was that they cannot prune timelines anymore because those are people. Millions, billions, trillions of people. So it's going to come back to that. What do they do with the TVA? Do they keep one sacred timeline or do they let it branch out? Well, Loki understands that if they let it branch out, Kang is going to come. His variants are going to come, and most likely probably some other villains as well every now and then. But there is an option of where Loki can let it branch out, but he could monitor what is happening in each timeline. They could simply look for Kang the Conqueror's rising in each timeline, and when it gets to that point, he could send a multiversal Avengers X-Men, whatever team to go and defeat Kang the Conqueror. That way, that timeline can still live on, but Kang is no longer a threat in that timeline. This seems to be how they would do it, because if they decide to just keep one sacred timeline, then they have to prune all the other timelines, which means there isn't really free will. However, if they just let it go and have no monitoring or control whatsoever, the multiversal war will happen. So this seems to be one of the only ways to where they could actually give people free will, which is what Loki and Sylvie want. But Loki and Sylvie are gods, so it does seem like they would be pretty fit to rule the TVA. I'm sure Mobius would pretty much be the man in charge, but Loki would sort of be like He Who Remains or the fake timekeepers. And I'm sure Loki would kind of want to get his hands dirty as well, going in with this multiversal team to try and defeat Kang in these certain timelines. And of course, they'll pretty much figure out how to do it instantly after fighting him several times, and hopefully they would intervene before he became super powerful. The TVA has the technology to know when somebody does something they're not supposed to do in a timeline and it starts to branch. They know the exact moment when somebody does something wrong, and then they're there to take that person, much like in the beginning of Loki Season 1, Loki disappears with the Tesseract, and they're waiting for him right away. So they could absolutely monitor Kang the Conqueror or Nathaniel Richards in every timeline that he could possibly be in, and when he gets too strong, they step in. And if he gets stronger than they could handle, then they could simply prune that timeline. Again, sort of making sure Kang doesn't get out of control, but still all of the other timelines could live and they wouldn't be murdering trillions of people. So based on the way that this story is going, this could be Loki's glorious purpose to lead the TVA to essentially kind of control the multiverse, but as a hero, as somebody who's trying to protect everybody. And that would really be just such an incredible story arc for Loki to go from where we saw him in Thor 1 and then the villain in Avengers and everything else we've seen to see him actually be the savior of the entire multiverse. That would just be amazing. But let us know what you think about this theory in the comments down below. Do you think Loki is destined to rule the TVA and that is his glorious purpose? Or do you think it's going to end in a different way? Leave your thoughts down below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you can stay up to date on the MCU. And if you subscribe and leave a comment, you're automatically entered in our giveaway for a chance to win an Xbox Series X, a PS4, some Marvel Legends items, or some DC items as well. We pick one winner at the end of each month and the winner gets to pick one item. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.